Hey guys, and welcome back to another Hypixel API tutorial video. And in this video, we're going to be going over how to use JavaScript to send HTTP GET requests to the Hypixel API. Before I go too much into the video, I would like to mention that if you would like to sponsor any of my content, I have a Patreon down below. And if you need help with anything, with just Hypixel API projects in general, I do have a Discord that you can join down below. And we have a help channel specifically if you need help with anything. You also get to see all the lovely content that I post there, like my Discord bots that I host and such. Moving on with the script, very simple. We have one main dependency. So if you've ever used JavaScript in console, which JavaScript is mainly used on websites, so this is not very common that you're using in console. Compared to how many people use in websites. But if you are using console, then you probably already know that you're going to be using node.js or a similar framework. For this particular example video, I will be using node.js. And as such, we do have one dependency library, which is node fetch. To do that, I'll show you here how to grab that. So if I show you guys here, we just do npm I or install. I'm going to write install, and then you're going to do node dash fetch, just like that, and you're going to run that, and that'll get you your node fetch library. Now if I go over to the code again, so we require that, and we're going to save that as fetch, and then you'll see here that we're doing this weird nonsense to get our API key. The reason why is because if you ever want to post your project open source or publicly, or you want to show the code to someone, you don't want to be giving out your Hypixel API key. And so the way that we do this so that we can show people our code, give people access to our code without giving them our key while still using our key for our requests, by having this separate file API key.json here. I'll show you an example of what it looks like inside that file. I won't be showing you that file exactly though, because I actually have my API key there right now. I'd rather not have to reset it every video. And so this is an example of what's in the real file here. You've just got a basic JSON object, and then you've got one single item where the key is API underscore key, and the parameter, this is where you're going to put your API key. So here you would actually have like your XXX, XXX, whatever your API key is, right? So you just do that, and then that you will import it using the local file import. So this is by doing, if it's in the same project folder, which I recommend, and this is what I do. If it's in the same project folder, you can just do // and then the name of the file, which is just API key.json, all uppercase for the API key part. And then we're storing that as a file, and then we need to extract the key from that file. So that's just at the key, API key, and we'll get the file. We'll get the API key. And this will be your API key as a string, which we can then use in the rest of the code. Moving forward, you'll notice I've got two properties here. I've got both player name and I've got player UID, and I'll be showing you how to use both of these with the Hypixel player stats endpoint today. I won't be going over too much about the response because it's a very large response that you get from this endpoint. It's all the player stats for that player, but I will be showing you an example of what the stats look like and such. We will be using the player Hyplex. This is a well-known Smash Bros player, and I'm using Hyplex particularly because he does have a lot of stats on his account, just to show you guys as an example, and I already had his player UID on hand, so I figured I'd use him for the purpose of this video. I've already got his player UID resolved. You can do this using like Mojang API, or you can do this by just checking their name MC, or like a lot of websites provide this. You can just get this however you want. Next up, we're going to be going into how to get your URL. So to send a GET request, to get these stats from the API, you need your URL. This URL is very simple. So you start with https colon and then // api.hypixel.net / and then the endpoint name. So today we're going to be taking a look at player. I've got tutorials on my channel and in the playlist if you're watching this video through the playlist for a lot of these different endpoints. In fact, more than half of them now, I believe. And so you can go ahead and check that out. But today we're going to be using player. And so where we have player here. And then there's a few parameters for this. You need your key. So we're going to be inputting our key. And we're using backticks here specifically so that we can do this. So don't be using double quotes or single quotes. We're using backticks specifically, which are usually in the top left of your keyboard, just so that everyone's aware of that. Specifically so that we can do this variable input. So this is string formatting. I can put in a variable like this. So this just tells the script that we want to take. We don't actually just want to have this as a string. We want to take what's in this variable API key and then put it into here. So what's actually happening is we're ending up with our API key like that in the actual string. And then we're doing the same thing with player name. Now, when you send out fetch, which as I said earlier, we're using fetch, which is actually node fetch. You get a few things, and we've got mainly 3 steps here, okay? This first step here is just to make sure that we're taking our response and turning it into JSON. The response you get from most APIs, in particular Hypixel API, you always get a JSON response. Now, it comes as bytes, which is, it's really JSON, but when you receive it, it just comes as like the raw bytes. We want to transform this response in bytes to the response, but in JSON format. We use .json for that. You may have seen this in like the Python version as like JSON.loads, or in many other languages they have similar things, but for this we're just using .json because that's how you do it in JavaScript. This next section here, we're going to be skipping over for a second. I'll get back to that at the end. And then here we've just got a catch error. So if there's any error within this fetch, it'll catch the error and it'll console log both that there was a network error and what error occurred. So this usually means that you messed up something here in your code, or it can more often than not, if your code's working fine and you follow the tutorial as expected, then it's because of a network error. So this either means that Hypixel timed out with the response. So if the Hypixel API is down, which is not very common, but just a few days ago it went down for like 2 hours. They do have, I think it's like a 99.9% uptime, but it does happen, so we include it. There's also things if you're hosting this on a server and the server times out before getting the response back, stuff like that. Just in general, like network errors, and that's about it. Now back over to this middle section here. This is where we actually get the data. So this is the data response that we get back. Remember that we already turned into JSON. And we're just going to be showing it to the console. This is just so that I can show you guys what it looks like when you receive data into the console or into a terminal when using this. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys my terminal here. And we're going to be running... something bugged out for a second there. Give me a second. I'm just gonna fix this. Okay, there we go. So here we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do node. So we're gonna run it with node, and we're gonna be running API contact.js. Now, upon running that, it's just going to print out the entire output. You'll notice that this output is very, very, very large. It keeps on going. I can scroll here and it'll keep going. It's actually several thousand lines long. Now, a much better way to visualize this is actually by showing it in Firefox. So I use Firefox. You can use any browser you want. I use Firefox because it has built-in JSON formatting support. You'll see why. That's important. So if you don't have JSON formatting, this is what it looks like, and it's garbage, very difficult to read compared to, and you can see this just keeps going for a very long time. But this has built-in JSON formatting, so I use this. You can also use the Chrome browser, Google Chrome, with, I believe there's a few file extensions that you can get, or not file extensions, a few Chrome extensions you can get that implement this auto JSON formatting. And there's many other browsers that have basic JSON formatting. If you Google like, hey, does my browser have it? You can check it out there. But this is what it looks like. So you're going to have your success, which is what you always get from any endpoint from Hypixel API. And this is either false and it'll say, I have another one called cause, and it'll say why it was false. So that's usually like malformed UUID or malformed API key, something along those lines. So it probably means that you mess up something in your like your player name or your player UID, anything like that, or your API key. Or it'll be true and it'll just have the data for you. Now we got true, so it worked, and then we can open this and see the data, and there's a ton of stats, and all these arrows here are just like little subfolders. So we can go into stats for like the game mode stats, and then we can go like Super Smash for Smash Heroes, and there's a bit of code names here, like Gingerbread is actually Turbo Kart Racers, but there's documentation for that. If you look on the Hypixel API, which you can go get to by going to api.hypixel.net and clicking on the GitHub repo and then clicking on documentation. You can find the documentation for everything. You can also click on methods, and then there's a ton of .md files. You can look at those all individually for each endpoint, and it'll just give basic description of what the endpoint does. For bigger endpoints like this, it doesn't show much. However, you do have access to some basic level documentation over on the GitHub repo if you choose to take a look at that. Now, this is what an example of what it looks like. There's not very good naming scheme for a lot of the stuff, but that's just stuff you got to deal with when you're using the Hypixel API. However, I just felt like showing you guys that so you get an idea of what it looks like. And now I'll go ahead and show you guys the code again. I believe that this sends synchronous calls. So I might do another video in the future about doing asynchronous calls using JavaScript. However, you shouldn't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on JavaScript. I mainly use Python, so I'm not too familiar on how that works. However, if you need any help with anything, like I said earlier, we've got a Discord down in the description. We have coding help channels. You can ask that there in the coding help channels, and I'm sure there's someone on Discord. We have people who are so good at programming, though it's absurd. They're so good at programming, especially with the Hypixel API. People who have touched every corner of the Hypixel API are on my Discord. So you can go ahead and ask on the help channels there, and I guarantee someone will get to you within a reasonable amount of time. You also just get basic access to all my Discord bots. If you have any questions on this particular script, you can go ahead and comment down below, and I read every comment, so I'll surely get to your comment and be able to help you on that. I'll respond and I'll get it all figured out so you can get straight into your projects. If you found anything interesting in this video, or if you learned anything, go ahead and like the video so that other people just like you can also find this video and get the help that they need so that they can get started and do their projects. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with all my tutorials when I post them, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe. And if you feel if you feel like you need to, you can go ahead and turn on the bell notifications so that you get the video right in your feed, like as soon as I post it, so that you're always like fully up to date on all the tutorial stuff, as I do post tutorials quite frequently. And even when it's not a tutorial video, I do stream a lot of my projects. So you can also, I'd love to see you guys over at my streams, simply because you guys get to experience what it's like actually coding big projects with real world applications. So like my Bazaar auction script that I posted a video about a while ago, that was all done on stream. I've got a lot of open source projects that you can contribute to if you feel like. Anyways, you can take a look at that, and I've got my Patreon down below as well if you feel like you need or you want to support the channel. Although, be assured that all donations are just donations. I don't need any of this money, so only give money if you have extra money to give, and don't give money if you really can't afford to do so. Anyways, that's been it for this Hypixel API tutorial video with JavaScript, and I hope that you guys found some sort of help from this so that you guys can get started straight into your projects and you can get going on whatever you want to build.